Good morning. Thank you for tuning in to the Mona Lisa Monroe Morning Show. Grab your coffee or your tea, hunty, because we have a lot to talk about. But before we get started on those red hot topics, please go to my website, www.monalisamonroe.com. We've got t-shirts, we've got mugs, we've got toast. Believe me, we've got you covered. And also, you could purchase my book, Life After the Diagnosis. If you know a survivor or you are a survivor, this is the book that you need. Well, let's go ahead and get this party started right, shall we?
Good morning, good morning, good morning, and welcome to the Mona Lisa Monroe Morning Show. Oh my goodness. I want to first off thank everyone who has been tuning in to the show. It is our third year anniversary. Yes, you are right. We've been at this for 3 years now, and our anniversary was actually last week, but it didn't fall on a Thursday. So I'm now celebrating our third year anniversary with you today, even though it was last week. I want to thank all of our fans, our portraits, those who tune in every Thursday looking for the Mona Lisa Monroe Morning Show. And I want to thank the newcomers that hear about us and want to see us. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I also want to thank those who click, like, and share the show. And you even replay the show and put it on your page. I love it. I love all of it. So thank you again. Click, like, and share the show. And if you missed the show at your designated time, it is Central, 9 o'clock, Eastern, 10 o'clock, Pacific. I don't know all the rest. But whatever time you tune in, if you miss it, always click replay. Or you can go to my Facebook page and just look at it again there. My Facebook page, the Mona Lisa Monroe Morning Show. And we also have the Mona Lisa Monroe Show. 2 pages for moi. And you can go to the website, www.monalisamonroe.com. And we have a sale going on right now. So if you are looking to purchase the merchandise, please do, because everything you purchase supports the show. So I guess I got my housekeeping done. And I know you guys want to hear the red hot, and we're going to. Let me get me a sip of the coffee, honey. Now go grab you some coffee and some tea, because we're about to get this thing popping. Red hot number 1. You guys know this show is all about what you're talking about. And right now, on the news, what's popping? Black teen shot by homeowner at home and recovering as fundraiser surges past $3 million. Mona Lisa, what are you talking about? This week, I don't know what is happening with the gun owners. Fear is not of God, okay? These people with guns are terrified, and I don't think that's a good situation. I don't think that's a good formula. scary person, gun. Now, I'm all for protecting your family. I'm all for that. I'm even all for hunting. Do your thing. But when it comes down to someone knocking on your door, you shoot through the door. And then when they interview you, you say you were feared and afraid for your life because of the stature of the person who is just so happened to be Black. His stature. You guys got to see the Black teen that was shot. I think he weighs maybe 90 pounds. But this man was terrified for his life. I don't know the details. It's being said that someone kept messing with his door. Da 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 da. He's tired of people knocking and running. I don't know, but shooting through the door. Oh, and I'm not done. Then you hear of another story of a person getting lost, thinking that the home is their destination. They realize that it's not. They pull in the driveway to back up and go home or wherever. The person, the homeowner of this home, opened fire at the car with these people that made a mistake, pulled in his driveway and was heading out. And he shot and killed one of the passengers. Oh, and I'm not done. Then there's another story. Two cheerleaders that mistakenly thought this car was theirs, pulled on the door handle, saw a person in the passenger side, realized it wasn't their car, headed back, and was shot. 3 scenarios of gun owners open firing on innocent bystanding people with no weapon, no threatening their life. This is just getting insane. What do you think? What are your thoughts? The first story was the Black teenager thinking that this home was a friend of his, and he mistakenly pulled the door open, tried to open the door. He mistakenly did that. Got shot. You're driving and you realize that is not the driveway, that is not the house. You pull in, but you are pulling out, and the homeowner opens fire. And then the third scenario, wrong car, but you get shot. I'm not understanding. What is happening? To me, the equation, the formula, the addition, however you want to look at it, is bad. Because when you have someone that is terrified, fearful, frightened with a weapon, they're going to fire the weapon. And crazy enough, their lives were not threatened at all. They had no reason to feel threatened. There wasn't a weapon. There wasn't a I'm gonna kill you. It was none of that. None of that. So I'm open to what you think about the first red hot topic. I'm glad that someone opened a GoFundMe. Hopefully he gets his money because, someone can open a GoFundMe without you even knowing and collect all of the money. So hopefully someone is being very, very cautious in this GoFundMe situation. Hopefully he gets everything that's being raised for him. Okay. I just want to throw that out there because a lot of times all these fundraisers, the money's not going to where it's supposed to go. I believe that alone. Leave that right there. Okay. The next red hot topic. Here we go. Here we go. 14 Democrats joined the GOP in-house vote to kill the DC police reform law inspired by George Floyd's death. 14 Democrats, 14 has joined the GOP about killing the DC police reform law that was inspired by George Floyd's death. Now, we all know what happened with that. And they had a law in place in the name of that young man. And 14, not Republicans, but Democrats, are voting to kill the bill. I'm all ears. I am all ears to see what you think about that, Democrats. What's the saying? I can't make this stuff up. I cannot make this stuff up. This is really happening. It's really happening. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, it is so much happening. We're not even, Santos, that is a whole show within itself, what he's doing to Florida. That is a whole nother show. I'm just sitting here going, once again, I have said it in year 1. I have said it in year 2. And I'm saying it in year 3. I feel like I'm in the what, my people? My beautiful portraits. I feel like I'm in the Twilight Zone. This is crazy. But hey, there's more. There's more red hots. This is red hot number 3. April, I don't know what's going on with you. I don't know. USA Today says, and I quote, white people were kept out of prison during COVID. Blacks and Latinos were left behind bars. What are you talking about? Well, I had to read the article. The prison population during COVID went down for some white and up for others, Blacks and Latinos. And you sit back and you go, what else is new? I mean, duh. The prison system is majority Black and brown bodies. But USA Today, not Mona Lisa, USA Today says white people were kept out of prison during COVID. So you sit back and you go, You were kept out of prison. Y'all remember the insurrection, right? Y'all remember all those people that killed some people, that stormed the Capitol? You remember all those people that were politely walked away, escorted off the campus? Yeah. Have you heard about any of them in jail? I read about a few of them in jail. But y'all saw the video. It was way more than a few that was doing the most on that day. And no convictions except a few. Your thoughts? Your thoughts. Your thoughts. That's what we do here. We respond. We converse. I want to hear your thoughts on red hot number 3. Red hot number 4. Now, this is not common. It's rare, but it happens. Especially, I should say, not specially, especially if there's a lot to talk about. I told you to grab your coffee and your tea. Civil rights activist slams concept of reparations and Blacks can only benefit if whites lose mentality. What are you talking about? Dr. Phil, just the other day, had a show on reparations. It was one of the best shows I've seen in a while from Dr. Phil. And I mean, Dr. Phil is cool to me. I'm not a fan, like I follow every day type of thing, but I fell on this show clicking the channels. I mean, literally fell into the show because I'm flying for other reasons. You know, I'm checking the channels, and you guys know the more channels, the more time it takes to find the show that you want, right? So I'm flipping through the channels, and Dr. Phil has this show on reparations. So I'm like going, oh, okay. So he had this woman on the show to open up the show. She was a descendant of a white slave owner, okay? Her great-great-great-grandmother was a slave, and the owner of her got her pregnant. She had children for him, and he gave them 40 acres and a mule, per se, gave them reparations. And with her own mouth, she said that if it wasn't for him doing that, they wouldn't have the wealth that she has to this day. She said they were able through 4 generations to benefit from the land that he gave her great-great-great-grandmother or great-great-greats grandmother. So she said reparations is more than just a check. Reparations can be police brutality, pay them back. It could be land. It could be business. It doesn't have to be a check. And I was like, you know what? That's true. And she said, basically, we did build this. We did build it. Who else did it? We were the ones building the buildings, making the streets. I mean, come on. So reparations is due to us. Now, the whole conversation is, how do you divvy thousands, millions of dollars to millions of African American people? So that's the dilemma. How do you divvy whatever the case is to the Black people that deserve it? So, am I a fan of reparations? Absolutely, absolutely. But how are we to get it is the question. Now, she made a very good point to me. Reparations is more than just a check. That is good. It's business, it's home ownership, it's land, it's money. It's all the above. So that was a good. But to have icing on the cake, y'all gotta go to Dr. Phil. This show was about reparations. It is amazing. The show is awesome. But this civil rights activist broke it down to the point to where it's like an elementary student can understand it. And I wish I had a clip to show you, but I don't. I can try to do it, but I don't want to lose you though. I wonder if it'll let me. Let's see. I'm going to give it a try. And while I give it a try, I'm going to take a quick commercial break and come back. Okay? All right. Hold tight. Here we go.
Good morning. Thank you for tuning in to the Mona Lisa Monroe Morning Show. Grab your coffee or your tea, hunty, because we have a lot to talk about. But before we get started on those red hot topics, please go to my website, www.monalisamonroe.com. We've got t-shirts, we've got mugs, we've got toast. Believe me, we've got you covered. And also, you could purchase my book, Life After the Diagnosis. If you know a survivor or you are a survivor, this is the book that you need. Well, let's go ahead and get this party started right, shall we?
Hey, I found it. Now, being able to play it is one thing, but I did find it. So let's see. Let's see if I can do what I want to do. Let's see. Let me see. I am going to see if it works, my people. Let's see if it works. That is the YouTube of the Dr. Phil show there. And I'm going to see if I can split the screen. Ooh, I'm going to be so excited if I can do this, y'all. Oh! Am I doing it? I think I'm doing it. Let's see. Hold on. Let me see. Am I doing it? Can y'all see it? Ah! There it is. Okay. Let me see. Let me work it out. Hold on. Let me work it out. Let me see. I gotta see if I can put it up here. Okay. Okay. All right. Let's see.
$1 trillion to find out who would
Okay, hold on.
almost put us into a dystopia of classes against each other.
We cannot ignore the reality of systemic racism and how it's affected the Black community.
The big crisis facing America is not racial.
Let's do it.
Have a good show, everybody. Here we go.
Okay, I'm gonna try to skip all of this. Hold on.
Talk about hard things.
Stand by. We'll count you down.
Today is going to be a changing. Yeah.
Come on, Dr. Phil.
Okay, so quite a few of you have. Okay. Anybody learn anything that really surprised you, really shocked you? What'd you find out?
I found out that I'm directly related to 4 people who came over on the Mayflower, and I'm adopted and didn't know anything about my biological history.
Oh, really? Wow. 10 million people from around the world have learned about their ancestors by using their DNA. And many Americans were able to go back hundreds of years and learn they're related to people who were everything from farmers to nobility. And on a darker side, slaves and slave owners. So what does this mean for us today? Now, perhaps nothing or maybe everything, because when we're still working out issues
Okay, so here we go, y'all.
that have to do with race relations today, our history matters. Some people claim the way to solve the huge disparities between the races is to pay reparations.
Here we go.
Or compensation given to Black citizens in the form of money, homes, land, any monetary plan that acknowledges and addresses the harm caused by Black enslavement in America. But there are critics who say, why should I pay reparations for something I did not do? Take a look.
A lot of people just don't know what you're talking about when you use a word like reparations.
The concept of reparations dates back to just after the Civil War. The federal government initially promised, but never delivered, 40 acres and a mule to former slaves.
What we're really talking about is addressing past specific economic harms, addressing the challenges we have today.
Top Republicans oppose Booker's idea.
I don't think reparations for something that happened 150 years ago for whom none of us currently living are responsible is a good idea. We've elected an African-American president.
We've tried to overcome all of our mistakes with the American Indian, you name it. We're not a perfect country, but we're trying to form a more perfect union, and I don't think this helps.
It's not a Republican or Democratic issue. It is an issue that African Americans remain the only population that can trace its history to bondage, to being chattel.
Slavery was reprehensible. It's indefensible. But reparations presents a whole different issue.
It is clearly an opportunity for America to enter into a constructive dialogue, open dialogue about the impact of slavery and racism.
Well, Patrice has been hearing stories about her ancestors since she was 4 years old and did her own digging into her DNA. She says while her great-great-grandmother Florence was a Black woman born into slavery.
Okay, here we go.
Florence's grandfather and Patrice's great-great-great-great-grandfather was a white slave owner. However, Florence received 40 acres of land from her slave owner father, which completely changed the life of her descendants for the better. And that is why Patrice says she believes reparations are absolutely necessary.
I have very strong feelings when it comes to reparations because my family received a form of reparations. My great-great-grandmother Florence was born 6 months before the Emancipation Proclamation was signed. She was an enslaved baby. Florence's father was Ephraim Peyton Jr. Ephraim Peyton was a white slave owner. This is the 1880 census, and it shows my great-great-grandmother Florence listed here under her father's household, and she is a servant in his household, and she was his daughter also. I believe Florence must have had a good relationship with her father, because when it came time for her to marry, he helped them buy 40 acres of land in Hazelhurst, Mississippi. My family got reparations from my great-great-great-grandfather, Ephraim Peyton Jr. This property has been passed down, and it has remained in my family for over 4 generations. With the funds that they amassed with the cotton farm, now the land is currently 116 acres. The property now has 4 houses on it. This is the house after we gutted it. These houses were built by my ancestors.
Do
The
you
land
see what I'm
is
saying?
absolutely beautiful.
This
It
is
is full of
crazy.
trails that go through the forest. There are 2 ponds. The land that we've inherited has kept my family together through generations, which is not typical for a lot of Black American families. Without this property, my family wouldn't have had a leg to stand on. They wouldn't have been able to get an education. I'm a 4th generation college educated Black American descendant of slavery. Because of this land, my family was able to use the funds to start businesses, buy homes. My grandmother, Dr. Geneva Handy Southall, was the first Black woman to get a PhD in piano performance. She was able to get that kind of education because we got reparations. I firmly believe in reparations. When I walk through the land, I wonder, like, hey, one ancestor received reparations in my family. What would have happened if all of my ancestors received reparations? What would have happened if all Black Americans received reparations? Where would we be today?
Reese, I appreciate your being here.
So grateful to be here today.
Well, I'm glad that you are. You told producers that you were only 4 when you learned that you were a descendant of both slave and slave owners.
That is correct.
Now, as you grew up, how did this affect you? What did you think about?
Well, for one, I'm very light-skinned as a Black person, and we're very different complected in my family. And I always wondered about it. And growing up, I would go to school and people would wonder what my race was and where I came from. So I think at a very young age, I was curious. And since my parents knew so much about our family history and they wanted me to know the truth, they told me right away, you know, you are the offspring of this woman, here is her picture, and this man, and they told me everything.
So there was a slave owner and a slave, but apparently this was a relationship that wasn't totally toxic because, as you say, this reparation was made voluntarily, right?
Yes. I mean, I believe that my second great-grandmother, Florence, did have some sort of positive relationship with her father because, I mean, when she asked for help, he would give it to her.
Mm-hmm. And this has made a big difference in your family, as you pointed out, and sustained your family across generations, right?
Absolutely. Generations of farming. My ancestors, right out of slavery, could read and write, and I think that's why I know so much about my family history. We have autobiographies. I mean, I think wealth comes in many forms. It comes in education. It comes in just our family being together still after all of these years. It comes in knowing your history, which a lot of Black people in this country do not.
Do you ever have mixed feelings about owning your land in Mississippi?
I don't necessarily think I have mixed feelings, but I do know that it is a privilege, and most Black people in this country did not get that privilege. And I'm a firm believer that when you have privileges, you should use them to help others. So Traditionally, this land in my family has always been land that has helped the community. And now that I have kind of taken over everything, I will do the same.
One of the questions that I hear and that I read about is that there is no one alive today that was a slave owner. There is no one alive today that was enslaved. So how does that translate back to 150 plus years ago?
Well, I don't think reparations is only a conversation about slavery. I think reparations need to be paid for Reconstruction, the Jim Crow era, police brutality over the years. I mean, my mother went to jail 7 times during the civil rights movement. She was put in solitary confinement as a 15-year-old little girl. Doesn't she get something for that? Because that wasn't fair. So
Now, there, right there, to me, was huge, because she basically said reparations doesn't always have to be a check. It could be a payback of police brutality, businesses that were stolen or burnt down, land that was taken away from us. I mean, that was so huge to me. Now, continue to watch. It gets, like I said, it gets better. It gets better.
I think, yes, we have years of reparations. It's just, that was just the start. There's more.
Okay, so for you, this isn't just about slavery.
No.
Coming up, we'll meet a man who says even though his ancestor was an abolitionist who fought against slavery, he does not believe Black Americans should be paid reparations. Find out why next.
I don't think it's enough for all minorities have been put through.
For people who don't understand why Black Americans should receive compensation or restitution, what do you say to them?
The United States has harmed the Black community for 403 years, eras of terror and harms. And so repair is necessary.
In 1860, over $3 billion was the value assigned to the physical bodies of enslaved Black Americans to be used as free labor and production. That's billion with a B. Now, some of today's guests say the United States has yet to compensate descendants of enslaved Black Americans for the loss of income that has caused racial wealth disparity for generations. Now, my next guest says Black Americans should not be awarded reparations because the issue is fraught with complications and questions.
My fifth great grandfather, Orson Smith Murray, was an abolitionist from the 1830s until after the Civil War. He was known to have said that slavery was the struggle of the hour at the time. That was the big issue in our country. Learning about my fifth great grandfather also kept my interest in social and political issues. When it comes to reparations for American slavery, I think morally it may be a good idea, but practically it's not. Reparations for slavery were a good thing 150 years ago. I think today they're not being used in any sort of good way. It's not well thought out. Who's going to pay for it? It's going to be future taxpayers. If you really wanted to help the Black community, you wouldn't just want to write checks to the Black community. You'd want to solve the problems with absent fatherhood or the broken education system in those communities. I've never seen a plan put down that would work rationally, ethically, or morally.
I'd like to now introduce political writer and consultant Joshua Ferguson and also Alex Gruenfelder, who ran for Los Angeles mayor this past year. While he didn't make it past the primaries, he has now joined Karen Bass's team as the head of her youth engagement department. So welcome to both of you. Appreciate you joining the conversation. Joshua, let me start with you. You say that this is a really complicated issue and that trying to do this now is just fraught with so many problems that it's undoable.
Yes. you have to define terms that people don't want to define. What does it mean to be black? What do we mean by reparations? What will it be used for? To find out who would qualify would almost put us into a dystopia of classes against each other, trying to divide us up as opposed to trying to unite us with any sort of goal. So
Now that part right there was very interesting to me, because he said that you would be separating or divvying up reparations to people who might be considered or might not be considered black. So he's going to make a very, very specific point behind reparations and who gets it and who doesn't. So pay close attention to this very point here.
I think there are more complications and problems than there are solutions.
Do you say it shouldn't be done because it's too complex to come up with an answer, or because there has been inequities that are still having an effect? You just don't know how to level the playing field? What's your...
You can't level playing fields. That never works in human history. The big problem is that when you look at a situation that's as long as it is, I mean, as people talk about it, they talk about the United States' history with slavery. There was slavery in what is now the United States longer than we've been a country. It's like 260 years of slavery under Spanish rule in Florida, 230 years of America. How do you blame America for things that predate America? I mean, we have these problems where you have to define what does it mean to be black. You know, doing my own ancestry, we have through my father, it's like 2% Congolese DNA. I have no idea where that comes from. I can tell you it's 7 or 8 generations back, and my family was here in the country at that time. So am I black? I mean, it becomes a very complex issue.
Alex, how do you respond to this?
I think that really when we look at reparations as a concept, we look a lot at the most polarizing part of it, and that's this idea of cash payment. And I think that we need to realize as a society that we are not only a country that was built upon slavery and that was built upon systems of institutional racism, but we also need to accept the fact that some communities have then been invested in by the government in the years since more than others. And so I think that when we talk about the racial wealth gap in this country, we're less talking about a cash gap. We're less talking about something that needs to be solved by taking a check from one person and giving it to someone else based on classifications of who is black and who's not, but also looking at ways that we can invest in communities.
Mm-hmm. Have reparations already been made across the last certainly 60, 70 years?
I think that we have begun to make progress in a positive direction, but it is moving too slowly.
Well, a lot of scholars would say that federal and state governments have already spent billions on social programs such as affirmative action, welfare, subsidized housing, healthcare, employment, development, education, that these programs that have benefited
now, what does that have to do?
Constitute reparations.
That was interesting.
In the billions and billions of dollars.
So you paying welfare and all of that, and that's supposed to...
First of all, there's trillions, if we want to talk money, owed. And no, I don't think it has worked so far. And I think that's why we do need to have a conversation about it today.
We're going to hear why a woman says being a mother of 2 black sons makes her feel a certain way about reparations. We'll be right back.
That you will find there were about 3,700 free blacks who owned 12,000 slaves.
What do you mean? Well, why is that? Because you don't know the history, because you never got the education.
So there's no acceptable response reaction in the short term, but what is it in the long term?
So it's everything. It's hitting every area that has been touched
this.
by systemic racism. We're talking about housing.
So this show today is basically educating you in this arena, right? Because reparations, when you say reparations, everybody thinks check, check, check. But the reason why I chose to do this show and to support the particular show from Dr. Phil was that they broke it down. It was bigger than just a check. It was not about just a check. And I love the fact that they dove into reparations to make it very, very plain on both sides of the spectrum. And that's what I wanted to sort of share with you guys. And now that I sort of got how to do this video thing, I'm so excited because all at the same time, this show is about education, entertainment, information, all of the above, right? And so the conversation can go back and forth, but this really intrigued me. It really grabbed my attention, and I wanted to share it with you guys. Now, what I want to show you before we close out the show was this a civil rights activist that broke it down. Okay, this woman right here had sons, and she was talking about reparations and how that affects a Black woman with 2 boys. But right after her was the civil rights activist that I really want you to hear. So let's go ahead and see what that looks like.
Discrimination, we're talking about we're talking about health care. The maternal mortality rate for Black women is higher than any other group. Everything that's been touched by it in our society, which has basically been embedded into the fabric of our society, it has to be addressed in every single area. It's not just a check. That's just like the beginning.
All right. When it comes to race, find out why our next guest says we're looking too much at the past and not enough at the opportunities that we have right in front of us. We'll be right back.
Now, this is going to be interesting. This is going to be really, really interesting. So I want you guys to really...
If we continue to sit back and say all of the challenges that we face, that somehow the control of that is in the hands of white America, this sets up a terrible situation for this nation.
When it comes to reparations, you have to deep dive and get into the details and what actually matters, as opposed to broad stroking it for social points.
Now, you
Politicians
had
often use issues
pros
like
and a
race
con.
to divide
People who were
people,
for it,
setting up the
people who
ideas
were
like with reparations that Black people are the victims and white people are the villains. You're absolutely labeled a racist if you disagree with certain issues such as reparations.
I'd like to introduce civil rights activist Bob Woodson. He is the author of Red, White, and Black, Rescuing American History from Revisionists and Race Hustlers, and also Lessons from the Least of These. Bob, thank you so much for being here. Pleased to be here.
Check it out.
You say you don't support reparations. Why not?
Not everybody suffered equally. I mean, when you go into slavery, it's much more complex than white people were the oppressors and Black people were the victims. If you dissect it, you will find there were about 3,700 free Blacks who owned 12,000 slaves, Black slaves. The question is, do the descendants of those free Blacks who owned Black slaves, do they pay? Blacks really benefited more the first 100 years after slavery we have in the last 50 years. I was born in 1937 during the Depression. Everyone in my small, low-income Black community, 98% of the households had a man and a woman raising children. Elderly people could walk safely in that community without fear of being assaulted by their grandchildren. Never heard a gunfire during that time. Never heard of a child being shot to death in the crib. But there are 50 children today who have been shot and killed in our cities. If you're talking about remedies, we've got to look beyond saying that every solution has to have a winner and a loser, that Blacks can only benefit if whites lose. We have to be defined more than just victims of oppression. When whites were at their worst, Blacks were at their best. When we were denied access to hotels, we built our own. We have to communicate to our people the history of how they achieved in the face of oppression. But if we continue to sit back and say, all of the challenges that we face in out of wedlock births of violence, that somehow the control of that is in the hands of white America. And therefore, until white people change, there's nothing that we can do. This sets up a terrible situation for this nation. The big crisis facing America is not racial. It is the moral and spiritual freefall that is consuming our children. The highest death rate among black families is homicide. Among Silicon Valley, the highest level of suicide, 6 times the national average. In Appalachia, there are prescription drugs. And so if we are to address this crisis that is causing our children to lack a sense of personal responsibility or value for their own life, they will take their own life or take someone else's. So in order to address that, we must come together and look beyond race and realize America is drowning because it's in a moral and spiritual freefall. None of us should be defined by the worst of what we were in the past, but we should be defined by what we want to become in the future. And that people are motivated to change when you give them a vision of victories that are possible, not constantly reminding them of injuries to be avoided.
I think it's not either or, I think it's and. I think we can do both. We cannot ignore the reality of systemic racism and how it's affected the Black community. You can't just be like, we need to just focus on our own issues. The violence is happening in the Black community. It's the Black people's fault, and we need to focus on that. Actually, it's a lot of things. So we can't just separate them and be like, just focus on yourselves, don't worry about racism. It's finding us. It finds us wherever we go. It's not our fault, right? So what you're saying is we need to focus our issues on ourselves and not wait for this. No, we can do both. We can get reparations and we can work on issues within our community as we have always been doing. But we need to start removing the barriers that are there that shouldn't be there. It shouldn't even be there in the first place.
Let me just say the problem with generalizing about any group and then trying to apply remedies to that group, it always benefits those at the top. Just like in the middle of the Me Too movement. Oh, women. You cannot generalize about blacks, women, or anybody. And if you do, let's just take women. So what is it? Harvey Weinstein and Bill Cosby get arrested. Right in the middle of the Me Too movement, there was a 2-hour documentary about women being raped in our prisons. For 2 hours, every one of the victims was a black woman. Every one of the villains was a black guard and a black officer. It did not generate any debate or discussion because it did not fit the racial narrative. In other words, the only time that we can become upset is when evil wears a white face.
I disagree.
We take a break here. If a reparations proposal is passed, how do we come up with a plan that makes sense? We're going to hear from someone who has a real proposal and says it just might happen. We'll hear about it and add that to the dialogue when we come back.
So, before we go, I would love to hear and see your thoughts. Drop them in the comment section of the show. Go to the Facebook page, The Mona Lisa Monroe Morning Show, or The Mona Lisa Monroe Show. Let me know what you thought about the show. And again, the red hot topics they were on fire today, but I don't want to end the show on a negative note ever, ever, ever. I want to end the show with telling you, or basically just discussing with you, the importance of what he said about a spiritual and moral lack of a lack of moral and spiritual in our youth and in our adults. What does that mean? America right now is suffering because it is not a spiritual, and understand me very carefully, it is turning into a demonic force. Okay. If you look around and listen to the music, listen to the Grammys or whatever, or see stuff, it is demonic, okay? There is no ethics or morals today that is a standard. It's just a free for all. Whatever you think, it's right. Whatever you do is okay. And who am I? I'm not the judge. Who is? God. Whatever does not look like him, sound like him, smell like him, act like him, it is not godly. So this is a conversation on the table. We don't have any and you know, you throw spiritual out there, and people say I am spiritual, and then you go to the wizardry and the warlocks and the witches and the, you know, the Ouija boards and all of that, and all of that is considered a spiritual ritual, you know. So you just really gotta, ooh, Lord have mercy, these end times are serious. But long story short, like I said, I didn't want to end the show negative. So I want to say that whatever you can do, okay, within your power to make someone's life better and your life better, do it. And then that could go another way too. It's just so hard to make it plain. The right thing to me might not be the right thing to you. So how do we do this? How do we say this? How do we fix this? Basically, try to make someone's life peaceful and better. And then try to make your life peaceful and better. So don't step on anyone's toes. Don't, you know, oh boy. All you can do is pray. All you can do is pray, because this world is, yeah. And as a rough hour today, we talked about some topics that, of course, is way more than an hour, but we talked about the Black teen that was shot mistakenly going to the wrong house. We talked about the cheerleaders going to the wrong car door, getting shot, and the people driving to the wrong house and got shot. And we talked about 4 Democrats jumping ship and voting to kill the bill that was named after George Floyd. And you all know what happened with that. And then USA Today discussing the fact that white people were kept out of prison and brown and Black people weren't. And then last but not least, we ended the show talking about reparations. And I would love to hear your thoughts about all of the topics today. Drop a comment. Click like and share the show. Let me know what you think about the new video feature that we got going on. Go to the website to purchase the merchandise, and we got a sale going on, so you don't want to miss that. www.monalisamonroe.com. And thanks again for tuning in to the show. You guys have a great one. Okay? Make someone's life better. And you have a good life as well. Bye.